special feature is health in football, but more specifically, drugs in football. A few weeks ago, it actually came up. A very interesting story involving Daniel Agger. And from Wednesday 20th of July 2016, maybe my story will make other athletes take fewer pills. The former Liverpool defender has actually opened up on his overuse of anti-inflammatory drugs and the day in 2015 when his body had simply had enough. Now, of course, we mentioned about Daniel Agger retiring. I think it was 30, only like 31, 32. But it kind of opens up as to why. The first thing Daniel Agger remembers is that he was unable to control his body. He did not feel any pain, but he was just lying there shaking. Earlier that day, on the 8th of March 2015, he had led out Brøndby to face their rivals FC Copenhagen in a Danish league game. He lasted 29 minutes before being taken off. He then collapsed and was taken to the physiotherapist's room at Parken. He should never have played. He was carrying a knot from the week before and, like so many times in his career, he took a lot of anti-inflammatories, far more than the recommended dosage, and his body had had enough. He stopped taking anti-inflammatories that day, and this summer, having quit football in May, age 31, the Danish paper Jyllands-Posten posted a series of interviews with the player conducted over a 2-year period, in which he opened up about his career and what he put his body through in order to play. Daniel Agger, of course, played for Liverpool, played for us, from 2006 to 2014 before rejoining Brøndby to play for another 2 seasons. He played 384 games in total, 232 for Liverpool, 77 for Brøndby and 75 for Denmark, but his body gradually broke down. He now has pain in his back all the time and estimates that he was able to perform to only 70 or 80% of his capacity during his last 2 seasons at Liverpool and at an even lower level at Brøndby. Agger's main problem was he was hypermobile, meaning his joints overextended. He started having back problems as early as 2007 as well, which were exacerbated by an awkward fall during a pre-season trip to Thailand in 2008. Now, there's a little more to this story as well. There's a little more to this as well. He eventually suffered a prolapsed disc in his back, which led to pain in his knees and toes as well. In order to play, he took anti-inflammatory drugs and used to treat rheumatism, often Celebrex, and at times exceeded the recommended maximum dose, putting his health at risk. I've taken too much anti-inflammatories in my career, he told Jyllands-Posten. I know that full well and it sucks, but I did stop it in the end. I'm not gaining anything personally from saying this, but I can only hope that other athletes do. It could be that others take a pill or two less. A week before the game against Copenhagen, Agger had suffered an injury and was out for the match. He desperately wanted to play, so for a week he took the maximum recommended dose of the drug, 2 pills 3 times a day, despite the fact he had been told by doctors he should be on that much for only 3 days. The side effects vary from person to person, and Agger often felt lethargic after taking the drug. He often compensated for this with caffeine. He took 2 pills on the morning of the Copenhagen game and then 2 more as he arrived for the pre-game meeting at Brøndby Stadium. He then fell asleep during the 15-minute bus journey to Parken, and his teammate Martin Ornskov woke him up. Ornskov later told Agger he had never seen anything like that before a match. Agger still felt very sleepy, so he took a caffeine shot and drank an energy drink before the warm-up. He did the normal pre-match routine but felt terrible. I only had one thought, and that was to remain in the dressing room after the warm-up, but then I put the shirt on and decided to play, he said. He was not himself though. His pre-match talk did not make much sense to his teammates, and he struggled with his movement on the pitch. It was as if his vision was not in sync with what was happening around him. Early on he was trying to head a long ball coming towards him, but he could not see it, misjudged it, and it fell on his arm. After 29 minutes, he had to come off. He sat on the subs bench, but later had to be helped down to the physio room. He doesn't actually remember that. He doesn't remember that at all. That night, when he got back to his family, his wife Sophie said nothing. She did not need to. Throughout his career, she had questioned whether he needed to take the medication, anti-inflammatories. She has said it time and time again that I should stop taking the medicine, but it has gone in one ear and out the other, Agger said. So when I decided to stop playing, she was pleased too, because of the pain I've had, and because I've taken so much medicine just to keep standing. In March 2015, Agger, who had already started to take the drug less, realized it was time to stop altogether. The body could not cope with it, he said. The maximum dose should only be taken for 3 days. The body reacts to what is put in it, and it was my body's way of telling me that it had had enough. When the head can't work it out, then the body had to do it. A year and 2 months later, he retired. He said, I am in a place where I've had enough mentally and physically, and it also means something to me that I feel I can still play at a good standard. The offers I've received to carry on say that too, and I don't want to embark on a downward spiral. I want to quit somewhere near the top. I've always said that that was important for me, and therefore I stopped now. So he debuted when he was 19 in 2004, and despite all his injury problems, played at the highest level for 12 years. It came at a cost, though, and he hopes that by speaking out, others can fully understand the dangers that come with taking too much medication. Now, one person from Monday 26th of July, just 6 days after this article came out, Wes Fogden, midfielder, opts for part-time football return to protect his body from serious damage. On Monday 26th of July 2016, Wes Fogden admitted the time was right to step out of full-time football to protect his body from serious damage. He opted to leave Yeovil in May with a year still left on his contract. It just wasn't for me. My body was just telling me, he told BBC Radio Solent. The last 2 seasons had been tough with injuries. The 28-year-old former Bournemouth and Portsmouth midfielder has decided to return to non-league football with Isthmian League, Havant and Waterlooville. A persistent knee problem restricted Fogden to just 13 appearances in League 2 last season following his move from Portsmouth. But an FA Cup first round winning goal at Maidstone United gave him a highlight for the scrapbook. Fogden's return to Havant, who were relegated from the National League South in May, will be his second spell as a part-time footballer, having last played for the club in 2011. The recent 5 years started off strong at Bournemouth. He added, I really love my time there, especially promotion from League One. Slowly but surely, the full-time training was quite a lot. The way I play is pretty full on. Once I'm out on the pitch, I like to give 100%, but it seemed I couldn't always do that in every training session while full-time. I've had to make that transition again back into part-time football and just manage my body a bit more. I just want to get back to being fully fit. It's been a bit of a distress on my body and mind. Now, one thing I want to ask, I want to ask the Skypers first and foremost. Drugs in football, and this kind of abuse. It's basically substance abuse, really. How rife do you think it is in football, and also how important is it to keep sound body, and sound mind as well? How important is the body and how important is the mind, not just to a footballer, but in life as well? Ryan Solly, have at it, man. You want to jump in?
Yeah, I'm just going to quickly jump in on this because drugs in football, I mean, if they're legal, then obviously footballers should be allowed to take them to a certain depth, because obviously it might be something that helps them. I mean, look at Mamadou Sakho's drug ban. He took a substance that was performing enhancing drug, and now his ban's been lifted. So,
well, there are a couple of stipulations to do with that, where it's kind of like grey areas. The the World Anti-Doping Association didn't even necessarily consider that drug worth a banned substance, so UEFA kind of have left themselves open with that one. There's a lot of grey areas within that case.
And to be honest, I mean, there was like Rio Ferdinand back in 2002, 2003, where he failed a drugs test,
well, he actually didn't fail it; he missed it.
Yeah,
that was why he got banned. He actually missed it. He didn't actually fail it.
But I mean, if they'd gone to him, like later on, they would have found out that he probably wasn't, that he didn't take any drugs. But back then, you can't take that risk.
But see, this is. I'm glad you brought that up. I'm glad you brought that up. Actually, it's basically about it's this for me. This is literally about risk versus reward. Because Daniel Agger, it's one of them was dude was taking like the maximum recommended dosage of maximum recommended dosage of anti-inflammatories, and it's kind of like that is a huge risk because you don't know what the side effects are going to be. But I guess the reward is playing at the top level for a little longer, just a little longer. And ironically enough, actually, that we're talking about this, I mean, I was listening to Troy Martin, aka Shane Douglas, his Breaking Kayfabe, and on his You Shoot, Shane Douglas, he was talking about his drug addiction as well and what he had to do to kick that. And one of the interesting things in the Breaking Kayfabe interview was the fact that Troy Martin, aka Shane Douglas, actually was asked by Sean Oliver. It's a case of those who have addictions like that, like whether it be to pain pills, whether it be to muscle relaxants, because in the wrestling industry, it's always been very, very prevalent. But it's one of them ones where it's always been the question: are you trying to anesthetize yourself to something? Are you trying to dull the pain, or just get a release, basically? And it's one of them ones where there were some of the stories about pill popping you hear in the wrestling business, like You Shoot Perry Saturn. Another big shout out to Kayfabe Commentaries. It's one of them was You Shoot Perry Saturn. Oh my word, these guys you literally used to have like a jar of pills. They didn't know what they were. Jar of pills, put them, and literally just shake them up. Whatever the first 4 pills came out in their hand was, they'd just take them and see what happens. And it's like, wow, you can't even. I can't even fathom the risk behind that. I mean that crap could kill you. Them guys are lucky to be alive. And so it's like it's one of them ones where it's like drugs in football. It's always been questioned how rife drugs are in football anyway. And the thing is it's always been questioned. Whenever answers have come out, it's always been doubted. Certain people have been banned for substances such as nandrolone. Like you look at Yap Stam. I think Edgar Davids got a ban at one point, but then that was found out that it was medicinal because of his eyes. And then there's been so many different things. But I think because the rules in football don't seem to be as stringent as other sports, like the IOC, the International Olympic Committee banning the Russian sides. It's a case of I think it's one of them ones where footballers are gonna get away with it and are gonna continue to get away with it because there are certain substances in a drug test that are probably not tested for. So stuff like say steroid derivatives, for instance, might not be tested for. So if they're not tested for, how the hell are you going to find them? And they are potentially performance enhancing. The concerning thing to me with Daniel Agger is that he was taking this stuff not even to enhance his performance, but just to keep going. And that for me is not a good place to be in, where you are literally shoveling drugs into your system just to keep going. If it's that difficult to keep going, you might as well just give up the ghost. To be perfectly frank, you might as well just give it up. So it is very much a tough one. It is very much a tough one. So it's just really one of them was it's slightly disappointing, but then on the other side of it, I mean, Wes Fogden trying to protect his body, like going back to part-time football to protect his body, it's a smart move. It's a smart move because there's no point in having, say, a 10, 12-year career at the top level and then you're alive for a further 50 years, but you can barely walk. It's like, Kevin Nash in his Breaking Kayfabe. He's like, yeah, man. Hey, I'm 50 plus years. I'm 50 plus years old, nearing 60, and it takes me 45 minutes to get out of bed in the morning. Like, not even waking up. It's literally to get out of the bed, and it's like that's obviously the sacrifice that he's had from countless knee surgeries, but he popping somas, which are muscle relaxants, very common in the wrestling business. There was also stuff like Nubain, which is also a pain med as well. It's one of them ones. A lot of these guys, and it kind of comes back for me. It kind of comes back to football as a culture, similar to wrestling, where it's like you don't want to lose your spot at the top of the game, because a footballer's career, if you think about it, is actually very, very fleeting at the top level. You're probably at the top of your game for a maximum of like 5 years, maybe 6. You could play at the top level for like 10, 12, 15, whatever. But in terms of being at the top of your game, your prime's probably like 5 years. So you're going to do everything to stay there and make sure that you are playing at that top level, to make sure you're getting all the endorsement deals, to make sure that you keep on side with the manager, the fans, or whatever. So the footballing culture kind of without saying anything directly, it's one of them ones. The footballing culture does have a part to play in this, because it's that whole dog eat dog mentality where it's like, all right, if you can't perform, we'll get someone else in to replace you straight away. It's like it's one of them ones where what's it? Carlos Tevez. Let's put it this way: Carlos Tevez left Manchester City. They got Aguero in to replace him. Fernando Torres left Liverpool. They basically got Suarez in, and Suarez ended up replacing him. It's one of them ones. You can kind of see where I'm going with this. So that kind of mentality where your window of opportunity is actually very small and very short, it's going to encourage you to take risks that you really shouldn't be. And Daniel Agger being the perfect example with the amount of anti-inflammatories he's taking. He was taking. So it is very, very worrying that if Daniel Agger was doing it, imagine how many other players were playing in that sort of pain. Imagine how many other players were having that sort of breakdown, potentially. So it really is one of them ones where, we've always heard the thing about, Lionel Messi being pumped full of human growth hormone when he was younger. Always heard that as a rumor. But it's like, if that is true, if that is fact, then that would be even more concerning if it was ever proven. So it really is an odd one. It really is an odd one. I mean, Scott Tweed, did you want to jump in? Did you want to jump in on this topic as well of drugs in football?
Yeah, hi. I just want to break this down into a couple of little points, really. I think if we look at the 92 clubs that are in the Football League and the Premier League, and you average that out at 20, 30 players per squad, that's over 1,800 young men. You know, if you get 1,800 young men who are not footballers, there's a massive chance that a percentage of those young men will be engaging in recreational drug use, which I think you would have to be very naive to think that just because these are professional footballers, they are not moving in those kind of circles. I know obviously there's always the urban myths that fly around that, you know, you hear stories of this person and that player and what have you being seen doing this, that and the other, and obviously nobody quite knows whether they're true or false, but that's one issue. The recreational use, I would say it's, I would imagine, based on that statistic, you know, that there's going to be a number of them involved in that. I mean, you look at Jake Livermore at Hull City last year, you know, caught with cocaine in his system. Of course, there was a story that came out, you know, behind his alleged use, which is a, you know, for some reason the FA felt that was a legitimate reason to not ban him.
I think it was to do with depression, because I remember when that Livermore news did come out, I think it was Jose Baxter was found guilty of a drug violation as well, which we also talked about last year as well. And it's it's just a case of it's being reported more, or it actually is pretty rife. I would say it's more rife, to be honest.
Well, I completely agree. And I mean, in terms of the Daniel Agger situation, I mean, I would question what's behind that. You know, a player of his quality and his experience playing in the Danish league, he could walk into near enough any top team in the Premier League, let alone the Danish league. How much of that pill popping is actually an underlying mental health condition where, you know, is he looking at that and thinking, I've got these niggles, I'm so desperate to play, I'm so desperate to stay at the top of my game because I have nothing else to fill the void that football fills? Is it, you know, I would question that. I would really, and I think that could be some of the reason behind it. You know, I need to take these tablets because I'm addicted to anti-inflammatories. I'm addicted to prescription drugs, and I genuinely believe that this is going to get me through each game. You know, I don't get it. I really don't understand how, you know, he managed to do that for the amount of time that he did without anyone. Obviously, his wife's obviously had words with him, but why has nobody at the club picked that up? And why hasn't his agent? I mean, you hear things about agents knowing the ins and outs of players' lives. Why? Surely an agent's going to know he's popping these pills. Why hasn't anyone gone, well, hold on a minute, you know, we need to have a look at this and we need to, maybe we can get you some different help. You know, I really, I mean, I was astounded when I heard that story. Really was, you know, because, like I say, I personally think he's a top class player who could get into most Premier League clubs. And like I say, the fact that he's popping these pills, is it because he thinks, well, my career's, you know, kind of going down the pan now, I'm coming to the end of my career, and I'm so desperate to keep playing. This is the only way I'm going to keep playing.
No, I think you bring up a few great points there, because it's a case of, I think the culture of the game kind of leans itself towards that, just like in the same way as pro wrestling, where it's like it's a case of you've got such a finite time at the top, and literally your time at the top can be ended at any time. I mean, literally one bad injury, and your career could be finished. And I'm talking about football, let alone wrestling. I mean, you look at say guys like David Boost, Luke Nillis, Eduardo, Aaron Ramsey, even like Demba Ba most recently, with horrific leg breaks that could end a career. I mean, it could be gone. Your career could be gone that quickly. And it's one of them was if you're carrying knocks and you're seen as a sick note player, you might not get the opportunities that certain others will get. I mean, look at how it's one of them was for me. Look at how Jack Wilshere's career has stagnated because of injuries. So it's one of them was you look at that. I mean, not everyone will be earning a top contract like, say, a Jack Wilshere and getting paid that. So it's one of them was they might have to pop a couple more anti-inflammatories than you're supposed to, and just have a devil may care attitude about it, just because, you know what, I need to carry on playing. I'm not even wanting to carry on playing. It's like needing to carry on playing. And it's one of them ones. As you said, Scott, it's a case of there may be an underlying mental health issue within this, because it's a case of addiction. Addiction is does very much tie into having some sort of problem, whether it be mental health or otherwise, because pain can be a trigger to that problem, but there's always with addiction there's always a deeper lying issue that leads to that addiction. There's always some sort of deeper lying, like, incident, or some sort of deeper lying issue that leads, that if you peel the onion back enough in terms of peeling back the layers, then you kind of realize, so that's why that person is trying to escape from this, or they're trying to escape from that, or they're trying to not think about this or not think about that. So and the way the industry, the way that business is set up, where it's so cutthroat. You just look at youth level, how cutthroat football is. Whereas one of them was, you ain't good enough, bugger off. You've just sacrificed 5 years of your life, and you've got nothing. If you've got nothing to fall back on, like say Duncan Watmore, who's the opposite, where I think he's got a business and economics degree to fall back on now. So it's one of them ones, but a lot of footballers don't have anything to fall back on. And once they get out of the game, whether it's too early or whether it's at just the right time, it's a case of they just go. There's gambling addictions that a lot of footballers end up going into, which we've discussed on shows before. Where say you see a lot of that. You see a lot of that with pros who are in the game now. Look at Martin Demichelis was one of the recent examples of someone who actually was charged with that kind of thing. So I personally think it's one of them ones that football definitely has an addiction problem. Gambling is one of the many forms of addiction in terms of problems that it has. But in terms of drugs, I'll ask the Skypers this, and I'll ask whoever's listening this. How many times, how many times have you heard, this guy's taking a painkilling injection to play? How many times have you heard that on they're pretty blatant with it on commentary. They are very blatant with saying that on commentary. And taking a painkilling injection to play a football match, that's not a good thing. That's not dealing with the problem. That's just, again, it's this whole thing where, like I've said on shows before, football is a very, very unscrupulous sport. And at the end of the day, it's like, when you're giving players pain-killing injections just to play a match, it's like, no, that player should be resting. I don't care how much you've paid for that player should be resting, because obviously there's an injury there that needs to heal. And then, like, if you're getting someone to take a painkilling injection, obviously they're playing through pain anyway, and you're just exacerbating that. And then what if that pain gets worse? What if it gets worse? So it's like, it's just one of them ones where I don't know, man. It's just very, very odd. It's just a dangerous slide. It really is it's a dangerous way to go. Just purely on the basis, it's an extremely dangerous way to go, because once you start, it's a case of once you start that spiral, it's very difficult. It's very, very difficult to get off it. So it's one of them ones, isn't it? It's not a good thing at all. It really ain't. So it's a deadly game. It really is. It really is one of them ones where it's a deadly game. And again, with it being a deadly game, in terms of equating this again to the wrestling business, where there's a lot of those guys who have dropped dead before 50. And you look at the toxicology reports whenever someone dies in wrestling, 9 times out of 10, it is a lethal concoction, 9 times out of 10 are pills. Pills, recreational drugs, whatever. So I just wouldn't want football going that way. I mean, obviously you do have exceptions to the rule, and obviously you do have certain other things like we've discussed about concussions as well. With Jeff Astle being the most high profile example of that. That's kind of a different issue, because that's brain injuries, but it's one of them ones where injury is the common factor. It is very much the common factor, and it's one of them where it's like it's one thing to play through pain, but when the pain is so bad that you're having to take pain-killing injections, you should be laid up in a bed somewhere. You shouldn't be competing, because you're gonna just exacerbate the problem. And if you keep doing that, once again coming back to breaking kayfabe with Troy Martin, aka Shane Douglas, he was like, you know what, it's a case of like there were times in his career where he, as a wrestler, where he was like, no, I feel like crap, can't go. I've got a ton of injuries I need to heal, but because the paydays are so huge for, like, let's say a WrestleMania, like it's a big time payday, and with footballers it's a big time payday every week. It's one of them was you can't afford financially, and especially if you've got a gambling addiction as well, that you've got debts to pay back, you legitimately can't afford to say, no, I need to take a few months to heal up or whatever. So it's very much a tough one, and as a professional, you got to juggle it. You really do have to juggle it. But football as a game, as a culture, the powers that be very much need to be on top of this and need to be testing for all these things. You can't just have like tests for 1, 2, and 3 and ignoring 4, 5, 6, and 7 that are just as dangerous. But I mean, it's one of them ones. I mean, you're seeing people. I mean, you're hearing of Daniel Agger taking maximum doses of anti-inflammatories, but then say Mamadou Sakho, for instance, is banned for diet pills, or Kolo Touré as well, banned for diet pills, and it's like, yeah, okay, these guys taking diet pills are either trying to lose weight or are trying to get a bit more lean, in theory, to have an advantage. In terms of Daniel Agger's case, he's just doing it to get through. And then you look at the side effects. It's risk versus reward. Having a rewarded 12-year career at the top is all good. But as said, if you're in constant pain for the next 50 years, you got to look at it and think, is it worth the risk? Which is why I'm glad Daniel Agger, I'm personally glad that a guy like Daniel Agger and someone with his stature in the game has spoken out about this kind of problem, where it's kind of like he's basically said, you know what, the amount of pain, like he's in pain all the time, and obviously there's a prolapsed disc, so there in his back, so there's a bigger problem than pills can solve. I mean, it's one of them ones, popping pills, popping a cocodamol or a codridamol or whatever the case may be, or OxyContin or Somas or whatever. It's a case of it's short term, because you're not actually attacking the real problem. But the way football is, it's like if you're hurt and you can't compete, you're getting replaced. What are you gonna do? So, here's one of them ones. I don't know if any of the other Skypers want to jump in, but if you do, let us know. But the fact of the matter is, it's a real. I just think it's really, really concerning. It's really concerning because the fact that Daniel Agger spoke out, there could be as Scott Tweed said, there could be hundreds and thousands more players that are doing exactly the same thing. And it could be an epidemic, we just don't know about it yet. For me, that's one of the most scary things about it. There could be a lot of other players doing this.